For those of you guys that have one flare and you're trying to get 2 flares, this is for you. All right, so if you're trying to get 2 flares, it's going to be sloppy. It's expected. So mark this position right here. It's going to be this right here, where this leg originally is. And this isn't going to be a definitive line, but it's what we're going to keep it for now. So we continue with our flare, our first one, right? Our second flare, once we get around to this back part, even if your feet drag, try and get your leg that was originally here back up to this point. So notice this leg comes back and meets this line right here. Oh, it fits perfectly. If you want to get 2 flares, even if you drag in the back, get to this dotted line right here with that first leg that you kicked up. And then do the same principle with this leg coming through. And if this leg drags, this bottom leg, and if it drags as it comes around, perfectly fine. So you're going to bring this one around. If it drags, it's fine. But the main thing is this right here. Get your leg to meet this dotted line again, just like you did the first time. Replicate that, and that'll be your second flare. If you get the start of the second flare, that's all you need, because it'll be just like the first. All right, so let's continue on with this. And then same thing, follow the same principle, bring this leg up, pull this leg back, and that's all it is. So you'll notice when I'm doing this, when I get to the back of the flare, it doesn't have to be a perfect V shape. The back of my flare, both my legs are curled in. I'm pretty much doing like a tuck planche, but I can still, and this leg is actually dragging, but I can still try and get the second flare by matching this right here. So if you drag, it's okay. Try and get to this point right here. That leads me to, I guess, the next thing. And this is going to be the same thing, but for the opposite side. When you're getting one flare, I said this landing is okay. Land right here. That's fine. You try to keep this top leg as high as you can. Obviously, a week or a month into it, probably won't be able to do it as much, but try to keep that leg out. So you try to do a flare and you land in this shape right here. Right here. You try and hold this. That's fine, right? So for the next flare, the second rotation of flares, if you're trying to get the second flare, for the first flare, if I landed like this, perfectly okay. If you're trying to get 2, go around back, bring your legs. If your legs crunch in, if you drag, it's fine. But land like this. So if this foot with the arrow landed on the ground and I landed like this, this is the start for getting 2 flares. So now instead of landing on this side after 1, I'm landing on the other side, opening out, getting ready for the second flare. All right. Oh, you can see it right here. Yes. So I got ready for the next flare and I stopped, even if I fell, right? Oh, this is a good example. All right. So doing the flare, I finished the first one, coming out for the second one, going for the third one. I could land here and say like, oh, this is the end of my second flare, or I can push for the third one and land right here, coming through the back and landing. This will push you for your next flare always. My main point is just no matter how you land your flare, if you come around and land on one side, like going back, you always, or come through for the second flare, landing forward, you always want to end in this position if you want to push for the next flare. All right, never settle for that middle ending, and which I did earlier. Let's see, it'll be, so these endings right here, if you're pushing for multiple flares, don't just stop here. This is like the worst thing you can do if you're trying to get multiple flares, because you don't end anywhere productive moving on to the next thing. So if you landed here, this will get this arm used to shifting your weight onto this arm. And if you landed over here, it'll get used to shifting your weight to that arm, if that makes sense. Getting multiple flares, that's the biggest number one thing. If you want to push the next flare, always land on the side with one leg on the ground, the other leg in the air. So trying it again. Don't want to end like that. This next one, you want to end like this. Good. Right here. Even if it's a split second. But try and hold it. So let's see how these look. So notice, even after this one, I push to bring it back and try to go for another one. So even if, and I try to end back here. So I'll show you again. And I'll draw out where I'm landing. So I do the first one, right? I tap. I go for the second one and I tap really bad. So I'm going to write out all the points where I tap. Here. Here again on the other side. I'm going to write out all my tap points. Again. Right here. Again here. I'm tapping all over the place. That's the point I'm trying to make is even if you tap, you can continue to push it. I tap here, and then I continue the flare. I tried to do another one. I tap here as well. Man, it's brutal to watch this. But I guess this is where I end it. I try to end in this open position. So I did all these taps. One, two, three, four. And I continued all the way around back just to land in this position. Go out of your way, even if you tap, even if you scrape, to land in that position to push for that next flare. So that's the biggest piece of advice I have for getting multiple flares.